If you can solve this chess puzzle, then you are truly a genius. Because if you make a single mistake in your calculation, then either you will lose the game as white or the game would end up in a draw. This puzzle was developed by Otto Blathy in 1922, who was a Hungarian electrical engineer as well as the author of Chess Problems. So here it is white's turn in the game, and white only has one passed pawn against black's massive army. But not all is lost if you have a passed pawn. So can you think of a winning plan for white which would immediately turn the tables? I'll give you 10 seconds to think about this, but if you want more time, feel free to pause the video. So are you ready to take up the challenge? I'm sure you'll be able to crack this one if you give some deeper thoughts. So without much ado, let's quickly jump on this. Your time starts now. So the key to finding the correct solution is to first correctly evaluating the problem at hand. So what is the board telling you? Black has a massive army here, but most of it is locked up. Most of the black pieces are immobile because they do not have any space to go. Look at all of these pieces. They don't have any space to move on the board, and the only two black pieces that have got some mobility are the queen and this knight over here. And even out of these two, the queen has only one square where she can go to. So basically the queen can just move back and forth on this square. Whereas if we look at this knight over here, if he moves out of the way of this passed pawn over here, then white's game would immediately get over. So if you don't analyze this situation and just hastily play a random move like h4 in order to get a queen on the board, then you would immediately lose in the game, because black will then now play knight g2, offering to sacrifice his knight. Notice you cannot capture this pawn, it's completely protected. So if white now captures this knight, the e2 pawn will promote into a queen with a discovered check by this rook. King moves to h3, the only available square, and now queen a3 would be a checkmate because all of these squares are under black's control. So let's go back. So since all of these black pieces are immobile except for this queen and the knight, and the queen is also not dangerous because she cannot move out and do anything harm to you because she is stuck here in this little box over here. So all you need to take care of is this knight. So what should white play? Well, the logical move is king into e1. Basically you should just capture the knight. And now what black can do? Black cannot do anything except for moving his queen back and forth on these squares. So now queen moves to a1, and now the time has come to start pushing our pawn ahead and get a piece on the board. But the key question is, should we push our pawn one step or two steps ahead? Because one of these moves will lead to a draw and the other one will give a winning advantage to white. So here the correct answer is h3. And why h3 is the correct move? Well, I'll come back to this later in the game, but now let's first understand how can we finish off black's game over here. So pawn has already moved to h3, black queen comes on a2, pawn moves to h4, queen a1, h5, queen a2, h6, queen a1, h7, queen a2, and now is the key moment. What should we promote our pawn into? Should we promote it into a queen, a knight, rook, or a bishop? Which would be the correct promotion? Well, just think for a second that if you get queen on the board, will you be able to checkmate black king? First of all, your single queen is not enough against this huge army of black, and this queen can no way checkmate the black king because she can't kill this rook, because this rook is protected by this knight and the king. She cannot capture this bishop because this is protected by the king and this rook, as well as these two pawns. She cannot capture this pawn because it's protected by all of these pieces over here. She cannot capture this pawn as well because everything is protected. So then how will she checkmate the black king? So in this scenario, obviously your queen is useless. That is why promoting your pawn into a queen would not be the correct move. So the correct move is pawn should be promoted into a knight. And why knight? Now the reason is, Since the black king is surrounded by its own pieces and is completely locked up here, only a knight can deliver a smothered mate in this situation. And now after we promote our knight, the queen comes on a1 square. And now before we make any knight move, it's important to think from which square do we intend to deliver checkmate to this black king. So the possible squares are the a2 square, the b3 square, the d3 square and the e2 square. All these squares are the ones from which the knight can attack the black king. But only one of them is a safe square. So let's find that square. So if the knight comes on this square, then he would be immediately captured by either the bishop or the rook or this pawn over here. So this isn't a safe square. If the knight comes on this square, then he would be captured by this pawn or by this rook over here. So even this isn't a safe square, since two of the black pieces are controlling this square. If the knight comes on this square, then he would be immediately captured by the queen over here. So this isn't safe too. And now let's look at the last one, which is the b3 square. If the knight comes on b3, then he would be captured by this c4 pawn. But if you look at the c4 pawn over here, he's completely undefended. So it's very easy to attack and capture this pawn. So once you capture this pawn, black will obviously try to push his c5 pawn to the c4 square in order to protect his rook over here. So in short, if you want to get your knight on this b3 square, you have to get rid of these two pawns over here. But now the question is, which pawn should we capture first? So if you capture the c4 pawn first, then black will push his c5 pawn and give protection to the rook, and then you will never be able to checkmate black's game because that would result in a draw. You wanna see how? Let's see if white aims to capture this pawn first, which is a mistake. So knight comes to this square, queen moves to a2, knight comes on e5, queen moves to a1, and now knight captures, queen a2, and now from here if you try to go to this square, then this pawn will come forward. And now if you capture this pawn, then the queen comes back over here, and now you get your knight to the a5 square to attack this rook, but now it is defended by this queen, so you cannot attack. And if you waste a move with your knight, then this doesn't help because the queen is coming back here, and if you come here, she's able to protect this rook again. So in any scenario, you are not able to capture this rook over here, and hence you will not be able to give a smothered mate to the black king. And here in this scenario, if you decide to waste a move by moving your king to the f2 square, then you will immediately lose the game because black will now get a queen on the board, king captures, and now rook moves to h2, making sure the king does not escape via the second rank. King moves to f1, knight d2 check, king moves to g1, knight f3 check, king f1, and now bishop e2 is a beautiful checkmate. Let's go back. So wasting a move with your king will simply make you lose the game, while moving your knight back and forth would result the game to end in a draw either by threefold repetition, or if you're moving knight somewhere else and wasting time, then the game would anyway get drawn by the 50 move rule. So that is why capturing the c4 pawn is not at all a good move, because that is leading to a draw. So after you promote your knight, you have to first capture the c5 pawn followed by the c4 pawn. So let's now first target c5 pawn. So knight moves to f7 square, queen comes on a2, knight goes to e5, queen a1, knight d7, attacking this pawn over here, queen a2, knight captures the c5 pawn, queen a1, knight comes on b7, queen a2, knight comes to a5, now attacking the c4 pawn over here, queen a1, knight captures the c4 pawn, queen a2, knight goes back to a5, queen a1, and now knight into b3 is a beautiful smothered mate. Now let me go back just one step and tell you why h3 was the best move and not h4. Because you played h3, you noticed how you got a chance to capture this rook and deliver a smothered mate to the black king. But if you had played h4 instead, then this queen's position would not have been on the a1, it would have been on the a2, and then you wouldn't have been able to capture this rook over here, and the game would have led to a draw. Because by playing h4 directly, you are skipping one extra move that you got while playing h3. So let's quickly look at the h4 part. So white takes the knight, queen moves to a1. Now if white plays h4, then it's a dead draw, because queen moves to a2, h5, queen a1, h6, queen a2, h7, queen a1, Pawn promotes into a knight, queen a2, knight comes on f7, queen a1, knight to e5, queen a2, knight d7, queen a1, knight captures c5, queen a2, knight goes to b7, queen a1, knight a5, queen a2, knight captures c4, queen a1, knight a5, queen a2, and now we have reached a position where you cannot capture this rook because it's protected by our queen over here. So that extra move that we got by playing h3 actually happened to save white's game. And now before we move on to the question of the day, I want you to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Now here's the question of the day for you. It is black's turn in the game, and what should black play now? Let me know your answers in the comments box, and I'll see you in the next video. And also do not forget to check the membership program of this channel.